Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and yes, it's that time of year as we are going to be starting our NHL season previews for all 32 NHL teams, starting off today alphabetically in the Western Conference in Orange County, California, is the Anaheim Ducks. Now, there's a lot to get to in this series, and we're going to be going through a couple of things. So we're going to go through a couple of the organizational changes. We're going to go through the changes on the ice in terms of what personnel will be new for the Ducks this season. The rookies. How many rookies could make the team out of camp for the Ducks? One breakout player that I think is going to make a huge impact on the team this season is going to generate some attention from around the league, as well as my predictions for how many wins and how many points I think the Ducks will have this season. Now, there's a lot of storylines for the Anaheim Ducks going into this season. Now, obviously, the first one being the Boston, Massachusetts native Greg Cronin as the next head coach behind the bench in Anaheim. This is Pat Verbeek's pick. This isn't a guy from an old regime like Dallas Higgins. This is his guy. And what I like about Greg Cronin is he has a little bit of coaching experience as an associate with the Islanders from 2014 to 2018, either as an assistant or an associate coach, as well as some time in Toronto before that. So he's been off from coaching in the NHL the last couple of years, but he comes back with a bang, getting an NHL job. Now, when you think of people from Boston, Massachusetts, specifically in hockey, Greg Cronin fits that mold to a T. He is going to push these guys, especially some of the younger players on this team that maybe need a little bit more of a you-know-what in the you-know-what. And that's what we're looking at here with a guy like Greg Cronin. He's going to push guys like Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale to the brink. And he is going to make them in the sense of, in iron terms. He is going to heat that iron to a point where they are molded into better star players. And that's hard to do, especially when the talent and the recognition that Drysdale and Zegras already have from around the league. He is going to find a way to push their buttons and get the most out of those players next season. And listen, the Ducks need it. This is a team that finished dead last in the National Hockey League standings last year. And when you finish with 55 points, when the top team in the league had 135, it's definitely reason for concern in the sense that this is a team that needs a new voice and needs something that's going to get the most out of what they have. And it might not even be the best players. You don't always need the most talented roster to win. There are much more talented rosters than the Boston Bruins last season. But Jim Montgomery got the most out of those players. And that's something that was kind of lacking for Anaheim last season. I think Greg Cronin coming in is going to definitely help with that. There's a couple of other things. So Jamie Drysdale, we know he missed a significant amount of last season because of injury. That will not be the case to start this season. Jamie Drysdale will be back in the lineup to start next season. He only played in 8 games in all of last season. He did not register a point last season. So, to say the least, Jamie Drysdale is going to be back on a renaissance tour, to say the least, especially considering his first full season in Anaheim in the 21-22 season. He picked up 32 points in 81 games. There's definitely reason for concern because he has not played hockey in a calendar year, really. He played 8 games. Like, what is that, right? A month of hockey. They need him to come back and just start out of the gate really strong because it's going to gain his confidence. He's going to be like, all right, I'm back, and just get right into the flow of things. Might not necessarily work that way for the 21-year-old defenseman, but I'm expecting Drysdale to be back in the lineup and ready to go. I'm really excited for that. But of course, with one guy coming back, another guy will be out with injury. And that is the case here for Isaac Lundestrom, one of the centers for the Anaheim Ducks. Now, this is a tough loss. The 23-year-old center is currently out of the lineup. He played 61 games last season for the Ducks. But the big issue here is the injury situation. So this was announced earlier last week on August 2nd. Isaac Lundestrom has an injury to his Achilles. The expected duration is 6 months. And if that's on course, that's around January, February, if everything goes according to plan. So we are not going to see Isaac Lundestrom at the very earliest, probably the beginning of 2024. So that's obviously very unfortunate for Isaac Lundestrom. And it's really unfortunate for the Ducks because this is a guy that they're really hoping is going to be a center in their lineup next season. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it might actually mean that Lundestrom doesn't actually stay in Anaheim much longer. And like I said, we'll get to that. Some of the changes on the ice. So we're going to see a couple of new faces and new numbers and new stitched name bars in Anaheim next season. Some pretty big deals here. So they bring in Alex Killorn on a pretty nice long contract. A lot of questions about if that's a good deal or not. The Ducks are going to force him into the top 6, and he's going to be playing with some really talented players. So as much as everybody's saying that's an overpayment and a long-term deal, you're not getting any arguments from me there. But what I will say is that Pat Verbeek is going to make sure that guy is playing a lot to make him not look stupid. And I think he's going to get any opportunities possible to be a good player with the Ducks and producing. I'm not saying he's going to be picking up any 30, 40 goal seasons or anything like that. That's not going to happen. But I think he's a guy that I think people are very much underestimating because of that contract. So keep an eye out for Killorn. I think he's going to be a good addition there. Radko Gudas comes in as well. Radko Gudas also signed a 3-year deal coming in. Yeah, it's a long-term deal for a 33-year-old guy. There's definitely some concern there. But Radko Gudas adds some edge to this team. And the Arizona Coyotes knocked this Ducks team around the last 2 years. And I think that was the signal for Pat Verbeek to say, we need to get nastier. We need to get tougher. We need to be more tough to play against. And that's exactly what they do, bringing in Radko Gudas. I think it's a great move in that sense. Both those guys, both Killorn and Gudas, add that edge to this team. And that's no different with the other guy they added in Robert Hägg. Robert Hägg is trying to redefine himself. This is a guy that was a former second-round pick back in 2013 of the Philadelphia Flyers. Things just haven't worked out for him. You know, things have been kind of up and down throughout his career. He was with the Flyers for a long time. He was in Buffalo, Florida, and last season he signed with Detroit. This is a guy that's not a point-producing defenseman. You know what the big asset is for Robert Hägg? 6'2", 204 pounds. That's what you're looking at. Robert Hägg is another big defenseman to add to this group. And like I said, you look at that group now, 6'2", 204 Robert Hägg. Radko Gudas, 6', 205. We know he's not afraid to drop the gloves. Alex Killorn, 6'1", 197. The theme of this is they're trying to get guys that are above 6 feet, that are around 200 pounds. And that's what the Ducks did here. And it's not just purely on the size. It's the way they play the game. Those are the type of players that they're lacking. And we always talk about Toronto, how they have that lack of that little bit of snarl and that, you know, not able to protect their teammates sort of vibe. And everybody's just pure skill and speed. Unfortunately, the Ducks have kind of fallen victim to that here as well. But we're now seeing that direction change, bringing in guys like Gudas and Hägg and Killorn. Those guys are going to bring that edge that this team desperately needs to protect guys like Troy Terry, guys like Jakob Silfverberg, Jones, Carlson, McTavish, Zegras. Those guys need to be protected. And, you know, as much as people say they don't, they do. They do. And that's okay. And that's why those guys like Killorn and Gudas are there. Now, rookies to watch for. There's really, I would say, one to watch for, but it could end up being two, depending on how things go for Jackson Lacombe. So Jackson Lacombe is a 2019 second-round pick from Eden Prairie, Minnesota, of the, I believe he played at Minnesota. He played 2 seasons with the Ducks last year, but he put up a basically point-per-game numbers with the University of Minnesota last year with the Golden Gophers. So this is a guy that, as a defenseman, can produce. And that's something that the Ducks are desperately going to be looking for next season. And you look at the potential of Jamie Drysdale and Jackson Lacombe coming together next season. That could be a really good lethal pairing in the future for the Ducks. So keep an eye out for Jackson Lacombe. That's my rookie defenseman to keep an eye out on. The easy one is obviously up front, Leo Carlsson. He's the second overall pick in this past June's draft. Last season in Sweden, he put up some pretty good numbers. In the SHL, 25 points in 44 games. You know, the expectation is for Carlson to be a really good guy that can score, but also is fairly reliable in his own end of the ice. And, you know, the Ducks are really excited to bring him in. He fits, and, you know, I would have liked to have seen what they could do with Matvei Michkov, But I think Leo Carlson, in all honesty, is a really good pickup here for the Ducks. And again, another great center to what they already have there. I'm really excited to see what he can do. Breakout player from the Anaheim Ducks. You know, you could say Jackson Lacombe, and I think that's probably the guy I would go with here. That's my wild card pick because I think Jackson Lacombe is a guy nobody's really talked about at all, right? Everybody out in Anaheim, it's all about Leo Carlson. And rightfully so, right? That's absolutely a guy to watch here. But I think that Jackson Lacombe could surprise some people, especially if he just vibes with this team, he's just a good pure fit there. That could be really an exciting piece here for the Ducks. So I'm going to go with Jackson Lacombe, who is one of the young guys. I think, like I said, the easy pick would be a guy like, I think Mason McTavish is due for a really good season after last year to kind of build on that. Leo Carlson in his first NHL season. But everybody's talking about those guys. I think Jackson Lacombe is the guy I'm going to watch for in Anaheim. And also keep an eye out for Lucas Dostal, the 23-year-old goaltender who is expected to replace Gibson at some point. Keep an eye out for Dostal because I think that could be the goalie of the future. I know everyone hates when you say that, but that's my guy I'm watching for the Ducks. So up front, Leo Carlson. On the back end, Jackson Lacombe. And in between the pipes, Lucas Dostal. So you have a rookie in every position to keep an eye on in training camp for the Ducks. So that leads me to my predictions. Now, again, I think this is a team that's still obviously in a rebuild, right? You finished the last season with the least amount of points in the NHL standings, the best odds at Connor Bedard. Things didn't work out, but I don't think it honestly matters for the Ducks because you look at this Ducks team already. You have Trevor Zegras, Mason McTavish, Leo Carlson, Adam Henrique, Ryan Strome, and Isaac Lundestrom. That's 6 centers right there. Realistically, it's Trevor Zegras and Mason McTavish, but Leo Carlson is the second overall pick in this year's draft. This is a guy that's going to be a top 6 forward. So, somebody's going to have to go to the wing. If not, multiple guys will have to go to the wing. So, as much as Isaac Lundestrom being out of the lineup kind of sucks for the Ducks, it kind of rhymed. It's not the worst thing in the world. I think it's honestly going to hurt Lundestrom more than anything because I think he's just going to end up getting traded because he's dispensable, which is a shame, but I think that's kind of what's going to happen. Troy Terry got his big ticket contract. He talked about in his interview with NHL Network the other day how he wants to get bigger and he wants to, his wife just had a child, so congratulations there. So, between the big ticket and his family and everything else going on, Troy Terry is due for a good season, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. He's always been a good player. He's always been a guy that I've always cheered for in Anaheim since the 2017-18 season when he came in. But he's going to look to build off the last 2 years where he had 67 points in 75 games 2 seasons ago and had 61 points in 70 games last year. And that was on a really bad Ducks team. So this guy has the potential to be a point-per-game player at the NHL level. And as crazy as that sounds, this Ducks team is going to be around that same level. If the guys around him gel and everybody's playing together and playing well, I think the ceiling is high for the Anaheim Ducks this season in terms of their potential. But in terms of winning on the ice this season and making a push for the playoffs and everything like that, I am very much skeptical. And the reason is I just don't think they're going to be much better than they were last year because there is so much young talent coming back this year. And it's a shame because I want the Ducks to make the playoffs. I want them to be better than they were this past season. But realistically, this is still a team that's going to win between 30 to 35 games this season. And I'm predicting around 75 to 80 points. Now, that's obviously improvement. That's a 20-point difference from where they were last season with 55 points. But I think that this is going to be a transition year where we start to see some guys starting to get phased out like Silverberg, Henrique, starting to kind of get cycled out as they bring in guys like Leo Carlson, guys like Mason McTavish to take over those center roles. Up front, Cam Fowler, I don't know how much longer he'll be a Duck. He's got some years on that deal, but, I think Jackson Lacombe coming in is a really big pickup. A healthy Jamie Drysdale would be a huge addition to this team. And obviously in between the pipes with Lucas Dolstall. Yeah, it's exciting to have all these young guys in the lineup and this and that, but there's a lot of experience that's going to be had for these guys and a lot of growing pains. And I think the Ducks are going to have to go through that this season. So my expectations are much higher for the Ducks than where they were last year, but this is still a team that is not really going to be a playoff team. They'll go to the trade deadline. They'll know they're not a playoff team, and there might be some questions about what they'll do, but I think for the most part, it's about the future right now in Anaheim. It's a state of transition, and we're going to see some experience and growth for these guys, but it's going to come at a price. And there's going to be some tough nights. It's going to be nights where they might get blown out by Boston or the Rangers or the Leafs or something like that. But it's going to be better for the future. And when you look at just the ceiling of some of these players, it's really exciting. And as a Ducks fan, I'm genuinely excited for this team. Last season, I didn't watch much Ducks hockey. I'm from the East Coast in New York, and watching those 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, games ending at midnight where they were just getting smashed by the Kings or even teams like the Sharks, like that was tough to watch, especially toward the end of the season. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be staying up till midnight watching the Ducks get the breaks blown off of them. So hopefully we see some improvement for this team, and I think there will be with the new head coach, with the new message, with some guys gaining a little more confidence, experience, a healthy Jamie Drysdale. I think the sky is the limit for the Ducks. It's just I don't know how far that's going to take them next season. So that is my predictions. Like I said, 30 to 35 wins with between 70 to 75 points for the Ducks. Yeah, I think it's healthy expectations for a team that is still growing. So let me know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think of the Anaheim Ducks? Do you think they make the playoffs next season? Do you think they hit 80, 85 points? Let me know what you guys think down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.